So, the first question is, who are you?
Who are we? Good question. So the instructor. I is short form for instructor. And I give the instructions, generally.
I am Q, and Q is short form for questioner. I usually ask the questions.
You ask some good questions, I think. Do you like being the questioner?
I do, actually. I really enjoy it because it gives there's a sense of creativity in questions, where sometimes I feel sorry for you as the instructor because it by default it's quite limiting. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I actually think giving instructions, telling people what to do is not in my nature.
That's interesting. So is this project or this artwork trying to expand that, or you're not interested?
I think it's a shift from my identity and trying to play with another character.
But that is the point of having Q and I, isn't it? To take
Yeah.
away from Oliver and
Mm-hmm.
and become different identities to explore what it is to make art, or just our identities.
I think it's more than just to make art. I think it's something about identity as well. And I think once we create a different identity, then I think then something stems from that.
Yeah, I think we're on the precipice of making something interesting, and these characters are enabling us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of brings on to a second question: what is our artistic practice?
That's difficult to say at the moment because I think it's developing so rapidly over the last, definitely since the pandemic started.
Mm-hmm.
But it always, for me, has been a part of a collaboration or involving people in participatory events. What about you?
Definitely, there's the sense of collaboration, and a lot of my research has been around how we work together, and I think that's stimulated by some of the projects we did 15 years ago, and understanding of where I sit within the world generally, but also within the art world, and social practice, collaborative practice, and understanding the differences and the similarities.
Yeah, I think there's some power, especially since we did this project, the lockdown drawings 10 by 10. There is a power about creating an environment, a project to involve other people and to create the network. And I think that was very important, especially as this very unstable, desocializing, insofar as we can't meet people face to face at the moment. I think it's very important to keep that connection between people. And this was a way of doing it. I think we found a way. We found a system, and we set up the parameters to do that. And I think that worked very well. I think people got a lot from that.
I totally agree.
Okay.
And I think initially it was about trying to find a way for us to communicate, and then we built in ways for other people to communicate. And I think that was a really important part of the whole project.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, it worked well.
So what do you think is next for us?
Stemming from the 10 by 10 lockdown drawing project, which we just mentioned, actually got 10 artists, or more than 10 artists involved, actually. And then doing a live drawing. I think the live drawing project was also very interesting to see how it worked in a much more condensed period of time. But what about extending it to a bigger network, evolving and developing our network I think that's the way we're thinking about, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's an interesting thing in the speed and this idea of creativity, and we're playing with ideas about the actual cognitive element of making more than
Hmm.
the final outcome, which is a lot of what art is defined by. So that kind of the initial, um, the word being the instigator for the drawing, and then the speed at which you make that drawing, I think has been really interesting and something that I think we can play with outside of this idea of Q&I, which is also going on in the background as well.
Hmm.
Kind of two aspects going on at the same time for us personally, and then us generally as a collective.
Yeah, and you know that collective, whatever we call that collective, as in the other people we involved, I think that's going to be the interesting point of how we develop it and how many people become part of a so-called collective, whatever, however that exists in a very loose form. If it's more of a, oh, let's all work together again, but maybe the people who worked on the 10 by 10 project, they will become part of a bigger project as well.
Hmm.
And creating that network, that seems to be what we're developing more than the actual results, like you say, more than the drawing. The drawing is a way of doing that, right? We're facilitating something
Definitely.
with the drawings, but then we're involving other people.
So maybe we want to talk about, and the last question is, where can we find you?
Hmm.
Um, I think that's a really important part because we're more than just us. Maybe you
Hmm.
want to talk about how you see that.
Yeah, I think the especially since we put a lot of these drawings online now. They're on YouTube, they're on social media. We've got an Instagram account specifically for these drawings, which people are now connected to. I think that's the way that we're going to develop visually
Mhm.
um, the network, because as we were saying about the network, but the network has to work in a certain way, in a visual way, so that which is the reason for the drawings. Um, and I think we're exploring these platforms of how we can do that in the best way, especially if we expand this project to incorporate even more people. And I think this will be a period of experimentation to see which is the best way that's going to work for the particular project. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't work, maybe that's just part of the whole process.
Yeah. I think we're trying to inspire creativity, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I think almost to kind of come full circle, the characters are a way of taking ourselves out of that and taking the personality out of it, which is so, has been the narrative for art making for so long, and trying to find ways to communicate outside of ourselves and be a community of
Mhm.
art making and not just personalities making art.
Yeah, the identity I think we've created is a neutral one, if we can say that, neutral from our own identities anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
it is loaded actually with the if we say what the questioner, it sounds um, rather sinister in a sense, and the instructor also rather sinister, like Big Brother,
Yeah.
like that people are being directed or manipulated or forced to do something.
But
So I
I think
think that's something that we maybe have to consider.
most definitely. But I think hopefully we are open enough and we take enough feedback on to uh, show that we are exploring these things and we are
Mm,
highlighting them to enable them to be understood for ourselves and therefore to communicate further than just ourselves again.
yeah, I think so.
So I think that
Okay.
seems like a good place to stop.
Well, that's pretty good, isn't it? Yeah.